August. Why is my head saying April? I don't know. Anyway, we're glad you're with us on the WHTC Morning Talk of the Town program as we get all our bearings set up. My name is Gary Stevens. Today, it's the first Tuesday of the month. We will feel the zeal in a few moments with Mayor Kevin Klynstra. We'll also have the Master Gardener, Jan Musin from the Brine Seed in Zeeland join us for the 10 o'clock Yard and Garden Hour, and we'll have a sliver of open line time following the 11 o'clock news. Patty Vandenberg will be with us in about an hour with what's new around Holland. But as I said, first Tuesday of the month, we focus on the city of Zeeland and the Mayor Kevin Klynstra is the other side of our Zoom connection. Kevin, good morning and welcome back to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question about what's going on in Zeeland, Kevin can be happy to answer it for you. Not via the Zoom connection, but via the phone lines at 395-1450, 395-1450. Let's first touch a little bit about what happened during the meeting last night. 3 public hearings, a couple of efforts to try to maybe designate areas a little bit differently and look for maybe some tax abatements. Certainly, whenever there's growth possibilities, the city would like to definitely help in that regard.
Yes, we had, like you said, we had 3 people, 3 different companies come to us last night, and they would, one wanted a tax abatement, and that was Mead Johnson, and that was, they're putting an addition of $60 million onto their plant. It's mostly a remodeling, but yeah, it's nice that they are updating their facility. And we're glad that they are investing the money into their plant. And so we decided to give them the tax abatement. It was passed unanimously. We had a commercial rehabilitation tax abatement for the store at 140 East Main, and that was passed. They are putting in a couple of apartments, or remodeling a couple of apartments upstairs and remodeling the main floor of their building. So it had been vacant for quite a while, and we passed it unanimously. And then we had one that they wanted to form a district, and when we passed that as well, and that was Woodward. So they bought a building that was next to them, and they are expanding into that. So again, we're happy to see that they are expanding in the city of Zeeland. And yes, so that one again was passed unanimously by council last night.
I don't want to make it sound like as if we're picking winners and losers with businesses. Obviously, when the one things about business in Zeeland, Herman Miller's comes to mind, Gentex comes to mind immediately, Howard Miller, the clock company. But don't forget about Mead Johnson, that big plant over on the east side of town. Doesn't get as much play as maybe Herman Miller or Gentex, but Mead Johnson is just as much of a key figure in the economic growth of the city of Holland as any of those other companies.
Yes, city of Zeeland, by the way.
I apologize for that. As I said, I'm just getting my sea legs back, shall we say, after a week off. But
that's okay. No, you're right. They are a very, very integral part of our industrial base in Zeeland, one of our biggest water users, and they kept on operating through the COVID crisis. They did not shut down because they were considered an essential business, and yeah, they've been improving their plant for every so often. They make improvements, and which is good. So we would love to keep them in the city of Zeeland. They did get sold to a company in England, and so you always worry about when companies get sold, what will happen to them, but they are still going to stay in Zeeland, which is good, and improve their plants. And plus with this new addition that they're adding another 39 employees.
which is always a good sign to see the growth not only in business but also with employees as well. If you have a question for Zeeland Mayor Kevin Klynstra, he'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Let's talk about some of the other things going on in Zeeland. I drive by through there a lot, obviously between going from home and the office here in Holland, and some construction is going on. One of the I want to say side roads, one of the side streets, but it is a big improvement there, and it does lead to some work on Washington Avenue as well, because improving roads is always an important thing for any community, and Zeeland's doing that.
Correct. And we are doing Carlton Street, and that is just about finished. They're working on the sidewalks, and they did move onto Washington Street and finish up the bike path there, where there was a gap there for a number of years for about a block in between Maple and Carlton. So they're doing that. So that was the work on Washington Street. And so that's nice that that's almost done. It didn't affect a lot of people. There was a couple different factories on there, but they had parking in the back of their buildings, and they could get off of on Main Street, and then a few residences. But the one that is affecting more residents is Lawrence Street on West Lawrence, off of Lee Street, and that is in full force right now. So I believe their plan is to be done by the end of September on that project.
395-1450 if you have a question for Zeeland Mayor Kevin Klynstra. Have you heard anything, and maybe you have, or maybe the council has, or it's more Tim Klunders, about what might be happening to the site of the old Zeeland Lanes? They closed a little bit earlier this year after a long stay on the east side of town, and that's a pretty good spot of land that maybe somebody could put to good use there.
Yeah, I have not heard anything, Gary, on what's going to happen with that. No.
Okay, I just was kind of wondering, because sometimes somebody buys the property and then comes to council saying, "Can you rezone this for us?" The zoning commission and all that. And
no, all I know is the owner had passed away, and so yeah, I'm not sure what is in the works with that. Seeing with the COVID that bowling alleys aren't able to open, I'm not sure if they have plans to reopen or what the plans are for the future on that site.
Yeah, it would be a shame. I hate to say it would be a shame if Zeeland Lanes goes down and fewer bowling alleys. Bowling is still very much a very popular pastime, and that has been affected more than others because of this COVID-19 situation. What's been affecting also the COVID-19 situation, the meeting that the Zeeland City Council had last night, part virtual, part in person, but if the public wanted to be a part of it, they had to go virtual as well. And it's also dealing with the access to the library, access to the Howard Miller Community Center as well. We're just keeping marching on, unfortunately, during this crisis, having to be adaptive and be flexible on how to handle day-to-day matters with municipal government, Kevin, because of the fact that we just don't know whether or not we're going to get another spike, or maybe it's going to be another downturn, flattening the curve. It's an uncertain time.
Yes, it is. And you were correct about the community center. We had to change it again with the governor's recent orders, that we had to move it back down to 10 people again when they rent a room, a maximum of 10 people if they rent rooms in the facility. So yeah, like you said, it's ever changing. We opened up our splash pad last week, Monday, and we hired some part-time help to watch over that, to make sure that it doesn't go over a certain amount of people. And that seems to be working. I don't think we've hit the maximum in there yet, so that hasn't been a problem. So it's we're adapting, like you said, that you go along with what the governor's orders are, and you don't always quite know what they are. They are a little confusing sometimes, So, but we do our best, and we try to comply with what she has ordered us to do.
One thing that I don't know whether or not you want to call it bugs, or maybe a concern, is the fact that you have to almost be able to read the whole thing. You got 20, 30, 40 pages of stuff to read before you can do almost anything as a government right now, because of the fact that, well, the governor says you have to have this, this, and this, but you have to read about 5 or 6 different things because there might be exceptions and stuff like that. You're right. Sometimes it is very confusing.
It is, and but that's the times we're in, and like I said, we try to do our best, and our staff has done a tremendous job. I give them all the kudos, because they're the ones that have to try to get these things in line, and then bring it before city council. And yeah, they've stayed right on top of things. So I have to give them all the credit in the world.
395-1450. You have a question for Zeeland Mayor Kevin Klynstra. Kevin, parks plan. I believe that was part of the agenda last night in the a meeting, sort of a master parks plan, I think, more than anything else. We've talked about the park situation and maybe access to parks, Heisinger Park most notably, because it's on the other side of Business 196. But that master plan gives an idea of exactly how Zeeland will deal with its parks moving forward.
Yes, we passed last night that we would contract with MC Smith, and they would develop a master plan for us for our parks. Instead of doing piecemeal work, if we have some extra money, we say, let's go do this at this park. This will give us a plan and a way to budget money to see how much we have to spend. And it's kind of like I said last night. It's the city planning commission operates on a master plan that we redo every so often. And the last time we had a master plan for our parks was 2014, and you're supposed to do it every 5 years, so we were a little late on that. But it helps with grants. That's the main thing. The DNR gets out grants every year to parks, and if you don't have a 5-year master plan, you do not qualify for these grants. So hopefully, if we get this done, that we can put request in for grants to the DNR, and we can get some money out of it as well. So the money we invest, I'm sure we will get back in the long run.
Developing a plan is one thing, Mayor Kevin Klynstra, but what things would you like to see in the plan that would maybe need to be addressed? We mentioned access. Heisinger Park is one thing that could possibly be the thing, but what other things do you think the master plan should have for the parks for Zeeland over the next 5 years or so?
Well, I'm a member of the Parks and Cemetery Commission as well, so they're the ones that do most of the planning for the parks, and we're real busy the last few years with the Heisinger Park. So yeah, we've talked about that, and I guess we'd like to see probably restrooms at some of the other parks around town. That's probably one of the big things. Some of the playground equipment on the other parks, we redid Timber Town and put in the pickleball courts in Heisinger, but some of the other parks have kind of not gotten the attention that they should. So probably some of the playground equipment at some of the other parks be replaced. And so yeah, there's a few things that I would like to see done, but we'll see what the MC Smith comes up with, and how much it costs. That's always the big one, is how much it costs.
Yeah, cost is one thing, and there's also people who say, "Hey, wait a minute, how do we steward our resources effectively and the most prudent use and the most efficient use of the taxpayers' money?" Some say, parks like the arts and some other things aren't as vital as some of the other major services that a city does provide. Yet I think you and I would probably be in the same boat on this. Parks is just as important because without parks, without having recreation, you're going to have an unhappy populace, and then you're going to have more problems along the way.
That is correct. It's all about quality of life. If you don't have parks, what can the citizens of Zeeland do? And we like to have it as a walkable community. And if there's parks in close to every neighborhood, that is a plus. And people can get out and enjoy the fresh air and get some exercise as well.
That brings up an interesting point I want to ask you, Kevin Klynstra. By the way, if you have better questions than I do for asking Kevin Klynstra, certainly we'll take them at 395-1450, 395-1450. In your opinion, Kevin, I don't know, maybe I'll phrase it this way. On a scale of about 1 to 10, 10 being great, 1 being not so hot, how would you grade Zeeland as a walkable community right now? How much of it is a walkable community, and what does it need to do to maybe make it even a more walkable community?
Well, I guess I'm a little biased, but I would say I would give it an 8. And mainly not a 10, because we still have some gaps in our sidewalks where we have to connect, and our new master plan that we had for our non-motorized pathways hopefully will take care of that. But I think all in all, we have a fairly good community that is walkable. We've got, like I said, we have parks in most of the neighborhoods. Our downtown is, before the COVID situation, it was a fairly thriving downtown. And so, yeah, I think we do a good job, but we've got some work to do. We got some things we could do better. The main thing is probably the crossway over Chicago Drive. That if we could do something with that, then I'd say we were at a 10.
That's why I brought it up, because being a commuter, I drive through Zeeland. Sometimes I stop in and enjoy some fine food and stuff like that, or drop a bunt over at Bunty's, and I've done that already. But for the most part, I'd go on Washington, or I go on Business 196. So I just drive through Zeeland, and yeah, I see those routes as sort of like borders. It doesn't look as if there's great connection between the middle part of Zeeland and south of Business 196 or north of Washington. That's why I was mentioning about the connectivity or walkability of the entire community.
Yeah, you're probably right that those are kind of our border streets. I mean, of course, it goes north of Washington and south of Business Loop, but yeah, that's always been a problem, I think, that we've had to work with. It seemed like the north side of Zeeland was kind of disconnected from the central part of Zeeland, and in the Royal Park area on the south side. And so I think that's mainly why we redid the Huizinga Park, to make it accessible for the people that lived on that side, so they didn't have to cross the highway. But we still have people that want to use Huizinga Park that live in the central business area or central downtown, that it makes it hard for them to cross the highway. And so I think we've done a good job trying to connect the north side, and hopefully in the future we get that crossway over the highway, and we can connect the south side as well.
Yeah, again, these are things that maybe just you and I are thinking about, but it does, when you drive through it, you think about those things about connectivity, because you want to have one community all together, not, well, I'm on, you come from the wrong side of the tracks instead of the rail. Well, yeah, there aren't railroad tracks through Zeeland, but
Yeah.
We don't want to have wrong side of the tracks in Zeeland.
No, we do not. Do not. So it's, but you're I don't think it is just you and I, because we had a public hearing about what we could do with the crossing of 196 Business Loop. And we had quite a few people come, and bicyclists was one they like to get to the pass on 84th Street, and then we had walkers that like to get across the highway. So yeah, it's a number of different people, and kids, of course. We want to go to Huizinga Park, so it's young and old, and bicycle riders, walkers, you name it. So there's a number of people that are interested in that.
Over the next month or so, as some of the events, unfortunately, Kevin, are not going to be on the board, but what can we look forward to?
Well, we've got. That's a good question, Gary.
Yeah, we don't have the pig out. No,
we don't
that's
have
gone.
Right. Right now we've got the Sounds of Summer that is going to happen in September, but we have to wait and see on that. Again, navigate around the governor's orders. So we'll see if that happens. But right now it sounds like we might have a somewhat smaller version of it, but we are going to have some that is planned. So
yeah, it's almost as if it's a case of, let's just see what happens come Labor Day weekend before you can start moving forward.
That's right. So yeah, we're looking forward to see if school starts, and like everyone else, and we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, it'll be an interesting fall.
We'll talk more about that in our next conversation next month. Zeeland Mayor Kevin Klynstra, as always, thank you very much for joining us today on Talk of the Town, sharing us your thoughts about the city of Zeeland, what's going on there. And we look forward to chatting with you again in September. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Kevin Klynstra of the city of Zeeland.